Good morning, and I'll ask you guys to turn your chairs so that you can sort of look at me and also have the opportunity to look at the screen. You know, that way you have a view of me and the screen. And I'm very happy and honored to be here with you guys this morning. How many criminal justice students do we have here this morning? Anybody here taking criminal justice classes? Awesome, awesome. Okay, great. It's a great career. Any profession in criminal justice is a very rewarding career. My job as a prosecutor, as an attorney, is to work with law enforcement enforcing the laws of the state of Texas. At the district attorney's office, we work with every law enforcement agency, from the school district police to Laredo Police Department, DPS, sheriffs, Texas Rangers. Their job is to investigate crimes, all sorts of crimes, from shoplifting all the way to the most serious crimes of murder. So when the crime occurs, the police are first to arrive. And as you guys know, their job is to gather evidence and interview witnesses, gather all types of evidence, physical evidence, evidence that may contain forensic, scientific evidence, to help put the pieces together of what happened. Once they complete their investigation and they have a suspect, they bring that report to the district attorney's office, and working with us, we take the case to court. In this system that we have in the United States, there's a presumption of innocence, and anyone arrested of a crime in our country is presumed innocent. And it is the state's burden to prove that they, in fact, committed a crime beyond a reasonable doubt. So what if someone's accused of a serious crime and they want to challenge the charge? They ask for a trial. And in our country, you have the right to be tried by your peers. Your peers being the people in your community, your equals, a body of 12, to listen to the evidence and decide if, in fact, the state can prove that you're the person who they accuse of committing a crime. Because what's at stake when the state of Texas is accusing somebody of a crime like murder? What is at stake for the person? What's your name, son? Mr. Salinas says, well, life. I mean, it could mean your freedom, right? Being charged of a serious crime, it means your freedom. So the stakes are high when you're in court. The stakes are high. And they're high for the family of the victim. When one of your family members, imagine, is a victim of a serious crime. And crime affects all of us. I don't care if they've stolen your phone, they've broken into your car, into your home, but it feels ugly when you're violated and somebody commits a crime against you. We've all been there, or we know somebody who's been a victim of a crime. Now imagine if a family member is shot and killed. How does that family feel? Devastated. And my job as a prosecutor is to try to bring justice to that family. We could never bring back the loved one, the son or the daughter, the brother or the sister whose life has been cut short. We can never bring them back. But a lot of times the family comes to me and they're asking, Mr. Alaniz, we want justice. Help us. We want justice. We want the person who did this to pay for doing this. They took our son. So it's a heavy responsibility that the police officers, the medical staff, the forensic examiners, and the prosecutors, that we all have in presenting a case to a jury in wanting to get that verdict. And the verdict I want to hear when I go to court is guilty. Guilty. So, I'm going to go with you through a jury selection process. And all of you, one day, may have the opportunity to be called to serve on a jury. And it's real easy to say, oh, you know what, I don't want to go to court and serve on a jury. But you never know. I'm here to tell you that when you're 18 and you're registered to vote and you become an adult, it's your responsibility as a member of this community to answer that call. Who knows? You may be sitting in a jury where you will exclusively decide the guilt of or the fate of somebody, and it's a very important responsibility. You may be a part of a process where you help bring justice to a family. Very important. So we're here on the state of Texas versus Victor Manuel Palomo. And this is Mr. Palomo, Victor Manuel Palomo. He's approximately 20 years of age, 21 years of age. And he is charged with murder and aggravated assault. Murder and aggravated assault. This is a crime that occurred on May 17, 2009 on Elk Street in Laredo, Webb County, Texas. The persons that he is accused of assaulting and murdering are Alberto Garcia, who is deceased. Alberto Garcia is dead. And Enrique Garza, who was shot in the leg. Alberto was 19. Enrique was 18. This was a prom party of United High School, an after prom bash that ended in murder. It was at this house on Elk Street in West Laredo where this happened. Did anybody hear about this crime? Has anybody, you guys were a little bit younger, but did anybody ever hear about this crime? It was in 2009. What you see here is the blood. That's all blood right there. Everybody see that? That is the blood from young Alberto Garcia's body when he was shot in the face. And the bullet came out of his head. And he was the neighbor. And he was there celebrating the prom that night. Now, when we're selecting a jury, one of the things we want to ask here is, well, why are we here? What are we trying to seek? And would you all agree that it's important in this process, if you're on the jury, that we're trying to find the truth? The truth was one of the things we're looking for in justice, truth and justice. Who are some of the players and participants in a case? Anybody have any ideas as to who you may hear from during this trial? Or who would you expect to hear from in this week that you're going to be sitting in this trial if you're selected? Who do you want to hear from? Anybody? Of course, well, you're going to hear from me. I'm going to be here the entire week presenting the case. Witnesses. Witnesses. What is your name, sir? Jose. He's saying, well, I want to hear from witnesses. Okay, we're going to bring you witnesses. What did you said something? The defendant. What is your name? Tony. Tony brings up a good point. He says, well, I want to hear from the defendant. Who's the defendant? The defendant's the one accused of the crime. In this case, it's Victor Palomo. There's a right that we all have in this country, and that's the right against self-incrimination, the Fifth Amendment of the United States. What do you think that means? Anybody have any ideas as to the right not to incriminate yourself? Anybody here want to? Very good. What is your name? Carla. She says the right to remain silent. The right to remain silent. What does that mean during the trial? And Tony wants to hear from Victor. Victor's going to be sitting here during the trial with his lawyers. But is he required to testify? He's not. He's not. The defendant in the United States has no obligation to testify. He can sit quiet during the entire case. And even though a lot of us agree with Tony that, well, we'd like to hear his side of the story, some people decide, you know what, I don't want to get up on the witness stand. I don't want to sit in the chair here in front of the courtroom and tell my story. There's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, anybody think of a reason why you don't want to sit in a packed courtroom and have to testify? There's a lot of pressure. What happens to people when they're under pressure? Well, they break or they get nervous. What happens when you get nervous? What are some of the things that happen to us? Talk fast. Yeah, you get sweaty. Maybe you play with your hands and let me tell you, you could be completely innocent and sit down and try to testify. And what if you start doing all that stuff? What if sweat starts coming down your cheek? It looks like you're what? It looks like you're guilty. So if I'm representing somebody like that, I may say, hey, you know what? I think it's better you just sit here, get in your suit, just be quiet, and let me talk. That way, you know, we don't risk anything. So there's any number of reasons somebody doesn't have to testify. And you have the right to remain silent. But that's a good point. Those are some of the players and participants you're going to see during the process. You see this word up here, voir dire. It's actually a French term, voir dire, to speak the truth, honest answers. Now, in a trial, when you've seen a trial on TV, like Tony was said, well, I want to hear the prosecutor. The prosecutors are going to do most of the talking and questioning witnesses. I'm going to be talking for the next week that you'll be sitting here. If you're selected, you're going to be seeing me asking questions. I'm going to be talking, trying to persuade you as to looking at things the way we look at things. And the defense is going to try to punch holes in our case. Okay, and the judge is like the referee. Okay, but in the entire process of the jury trial, this is the only time that I get to find out from you how you feel. What are your feelings? You know, you may not feel like this is a good case for you to sit on. And this will be the time to tell you, hey, Mr. Alaniz, you know what? I'll tell you what, I don't think I could be fair in this case. This is not the case for me. Why? Well, can I ask you why? Well, because I feel a certain way, and it's not going to be fair to the defendant. I appreciate your honesty. And during this process, jury selection is a time for you to tell me how you feel. One of the things we need to know is anybody here know the defendant? Anybody know the defense attorney? Anybody know somebody in my office? Let me ask you, for the defendant's purposes, would it be fair to the defendant if my cousin was on the jury? Right? So the defense is going to ask, is anybody here related to Mr. Alaniz? Let's say, well, what if my brother raises his hand and says, hey, well, yeah, it's my brother. What's the defense attorney going to say? Yeah, well, that's right, but you go to the judge and you say, Your Honor, look, that gentleman over there just raised his hand. He played baseball with Mr. Alaniz in high school, and he's also played basketball with him, and they're close. You know, I don't think it'd be good for him to be on the jury. He's just going to vote for Mr. Alaniz. He has an argument, so that person will be removed, okay? And that's what's going on, okay? Questions? We have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Anybody have any ideas as to what this means? Kind of stuff that you talk about in class. Well, you're bringing up a good point, whether he's asking if it's voluntary or involuntary manslaughter. That goes more to the charge, but what we're focusing here is the burden. How much do I have to prove to you to be convinced that Victor Palomo did this? I really can't put a number to it, but If we were to put a number to it, how sure would you have to be, or how sure would I have to convince you, or percentage, that he did it for you to say he's guilty? Think about that. I always like to give the example of a puzzle. Imagine a puzzle with 100 pieces. Okay? And I have a slide, but I don't think I have it here. Imagine the puzzle of 100 pieces. And how many pieces of that puzzle would you need in order to say, I know what it is? Do you need all 100? More or less. How many do you think you would need?
I don't know, most of it.
Pick a random number out of 100 pieces. 70? What's your name?
David.
David says, well, I think with 70 I'll be able to tell the picture. How about you, Tony? How many pieces do you think?
50 to 65.
Well, 50 to 65. All of us are different. All of us are different. Now let me ask you, if the police, you're a policeman and you go to a crime scene, depending on the response time, it may be 5 minutes, it may be a day after, depending on how long it took to discover the crime. Are you going to discover every single piece of evidence? No, right? I mean, it's not a perfect world. I mean, you go there as a police officer and you're looking for all sorts of evidence. But do you really find every single piece of evidence? No. So it's not a perfect system, okay? So, and beyond a reasonable doubt, that's an individual burden that you will decide, if selected on this jury, to decide, you know what, Mr. Alaniz proved it to me. He proved it to me. You know, for me, 70%, 70 out of 100 pieces is sufficient, but guess what? He brought 90%. To me, he brought 92% in my head. So I could vote what he's asking me to vote. Does that make sense? And that's beyond a reasonable doubt. There's testimony, there's physical, circumstantial, and scientific evidence. So one of the concepts that sometimes jurors get stuck on is circumstantial evidence, and real quickly, that means evidence that is not that you don't see it, but there's circumstances that lead you to believe confidently that somebody did something, you know. How many of you guys have brothers or sisters? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you guys have a personal piece of property, whether it be your Xbox or your guitar or a book or something that you just don't like anybody touching, but if somebody goes and grabs it, moves it, goes into your drawer, whatever it is, you get home from school or you discover it, then you have to do an investigation. Try to figure out, hey, who was messing with my stuff? Did you see the person do it? No. But you find circumstantial evidence that, and you talk to your family members or your friends and you figure out, hey, it was you. And I know why I know how. And that's perfectly good evidence that sometimes we use in the courts. So don't get stuck on the fact that, hey, well, the cop didn't see him do it. But you know what? You apply your common sense, and circumstantial evidence is as solid as direct evidence. And felony murder, this is a definition that you find in the book, basically saying somebody attempts to commit a felony other than manslaughter, and in furtherance or attempt or immediate flight of commission, he commits or attempts an act clearly dangerous to human life. Shooting a gun into a crowded prom party. Is that an act clearly dangerous to human life? Right? There was 9 shots from a 9mm handgun. 8 or 9 shots from a 9mm handgun shot randomly at the Palapa in a backyard on this day. Just like this. Is that a dangerous act? So that's what we are going to attempt to prove during this trial. Aggravated assault, when somebody causes serious bodily injury. Is getting shot in the thigh with a bullet going clean through your thigh and coming out the back of your hamstring, is that a serious bodily injury? Okay, so we're gonna see that during this case. You're gonna see how this other young boy who was at the party standing under the palapa, when all hell broke loose, he gets shot in the leg. The buddy that he's talking to gets shot in the face with no involvement in the situation. Wrong place, wrong time. There's two phases to every trial. There's guilt, innocence phase, and it should really say guilt or not guilty, because there's a presumption of innocence. And if the person's found guilty, then you, the jury, will then decide what's going to be the punishment. What do we punish? What is the range of punishment for murder in the state of Texas? Anybody want to give it a guess? No. Okay. Well, it's not death. It's not death. That's capital murder, and this is not a capital murder case. What other? Life, yes. Life is the high range. 99 or life is the top. And the bottom? Yeah, it's 10 to life, or 5 to 99 or life. I mean, every crime has it, but I want to say it's 5 to all the way to life for felony 1. Well, yeah, there it is. Okay, so it's life to 5 to 99. Felony 1. Felony 2, aggravated assault. Now, what are the crimes that we're dealing with here? 2 crimes, 2 victims. And what did we say we have? We have one boy shot where? Who died? The other boy shot where? In the leg. So we have aggravated assault, and then we have murder. Deadly conduct is also the crime of what are we accusing the defendant of doing? Shooting into a crowded party. And that is the process of jury selection. That is the process of jury selection. So you get a sort of a little roadmap of what, if you're chosen, what the case is going to be about. You know that the defendant is what? Presumed innocent. And who has to prove that he's guilty? I do. And how do I prove that? With evidence, with witnesses. Okay? Again, I know you guys have to go to another class. Thank you very much.